Just got back from a trip from San Antonio and wanted to throw a few things down here, try and keep it short. It's probably a late recording and I'll probably have to edit some shit out later, but there were a lot of things that I picked up at this show, and I wanted to kind of share them with you guys because Keith and I have spent the last probably 9 months traveling around doing trade shows, and I can firmly tell you that there are a lot of opportunities that are being missed. And everybody talks about opportunity and wants to say, oh, well, we had a great show, we had a great this, we had a great that. And yet they're spending lots of money, lots of time, and lots of resources to go to an event where the ROI is probably not positive. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason is that the people are not preparing. Just like anything in school, life, work, anything, if you want to be great at something, you have to prepare. And the reason I say that is because it's super duper crucial that you write down your goals and objectives before you go do one of these events. There are lots of groups out there that are not doing it. They're simply going there to show up. They're a salaried employee. They have no incentive to sell anything. And at the end of the day, they walk out of there thinking they crushed it, but they really didn't do anything. And the reason that I wanted to go over that was because if you're going to be great at something, you might as well go all in, because there's really no more effort to go all in than to just go half in. And at this show, I saw probably about 50 vendors total walking around, and products, big capital equipment products, $300,000 products, all the way down to some really inexpensive kind of trinkets, more, CBD type stuff. And for me, I look at that and I go, man, that is an opportunity for people to do great by their company. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to put in the effort and you're not willing to prospect properly, you're not going to be prepared. So in this episode of the Prospecting Show, I just want to go over a couple tips on things that I think are super important to help prepare for a trade show. And this would apply to any in-person meeting you're doing. If there's multiple potential clients there, multiple people who are interested in doing business with you, it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, it's what do you do to maximize your time when you're going to an event? So a few things. First of all, know your audience. You got to look up the people that are going to be at this event and make sure you know them so that you can interact with them before you get there. So what we do, for example, is we focus a lot of our time making business-to-business relationships through LinkedIn, email, phone calls, text messages, and geofencing prior to the event. And a couple people are going to ask, what is geofencing? Not everybody's in the ad space, so just kind of lay that down. Basically, what we end up doing is we say, okay, well, this event is taking place at a specific location. Let's run our ads, but our product, our service, or everything in between directly to that event with a very small radius so that people who walk into the building on their phones only are going to be served an ad that is about our product or service. And that's a very cost-effective way to do it. If you want to get into the advertising space right now, you got to spend $2,000 to $5,000 a month minimum, especially if you have a product, because the ROI just does not happen until you spend huge budgets. So if you're a company just starting out, don't have $5,000 a month to spend on ads, spend your time geofencing the events you're already at. You could spend $200 a day for 3 or 4 days while you're there and get a way better ROI than if you were to try and run ads, at $30, $50, $70, $100, $200 a day, 30 days out of the month. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you got to know that audience. Well, when you walk into the trade show, if you haven't already made connections with people, you have already lost. You might as well pack it in. So what you do is you go out and prospect, get the list from the vendor sheet, which will tell you all the people who are going to be there, and look at syndicate partnership opportunities. There are so many companies out there that are willing to buy what you have and partner with you to help sell to another group. So for example, you might have a product that fulfills one sub niche in that group, and you might be across the booth from someone else who has another sub niche. Well, there's absolutely no reason you two could not partner together to either have a value add from one product to the next, or be able to increase the product's price by combining them together. A lot of people think when you combine two products together, you got to lower the price. That is not true at all. There are lots of products, lots of research around combining two products being more expensive because it's one-stop shopping and you are creating efficiency for your customer. So that's another thing. It's syndication. If you can't syndicate a deal, at least broker a deal or wholesale a deal. Meaning that if you have a product specifically and you're looking for other groups to work with and you don't want to do a one-to-one sale, go out there and sell your CBD product, for example, to one chiropractor, or your CBD product to a consumer, for example, you would go out there and you'd syndicate that deal into a warehousing system, a distribution system, or a wholesaling system, so that you can focus on doing deals that are between $1,000 and $5,000 instead of focusing on your $30, $50, $100 deals. So you're doing the same amount of work, the same sales process, and kind of roughly the same kind of sales pitch. You're just doing it to the right person who's willing to spend more money. So that's another way you can maximize it. The last thing that I like to do is make sure that you ask a lot of questions from other people that are there. If you speak first and you speak the most in any conversation, you will not be good. And the reason that is because the customer doesn't feel like they control the conversation. And in that particular case, they're going to put up those barriers and not allow you to sell to them. And that's something that's a little more complicated to do than just to say. But if you practice letting a customer finish their whole sentence, tell you what they're looking for, and you sit back and really listen to what they have to say, you will be so much better at selling something than if you were to just ram it down their throats to start. And Grant Cardone once said, if you can't be good, be frequent. And if you can't be great, be frequent. And really all that boils down to is the first time you do something and you have this pivot shift in your mind about how you sell things, it's not going to be easy. You're not going to sit there and say, okay, well, I'm going to try this new technique for selling our product or our service, or we have a new product and we're going to try and get out there. You're not going to kill it on the first 5 pitches. So instead of worrying about getting an 80% close rate, accept your 20 to 30% close rate and 10x or move up all of those prospecting opportunities. So when you go to a trade show, prospect the crap out of that crowd ahead of time so you have 100 conversations when you're there, because it's a lot easier to increase the number of conversations you're having than it is to increase your close ratio. If you're averaging your close ratio over thousands and thousands of deals, the likelihood of you going from 20% to 80% is basically nothing. But what you can do is you can prospect more people, have more phone calls, more business opportunities, and more syndication opportunities. And if you're willing to go out there and do those steps, I promise you will find a way to do that. Now, the next part of that whole process is, what do you do once the show's done, right? So we've talked about before the show, how to prospect a little bit there, a little bit about geofencing, meeting and doing partnerships and syndications at the actual event. But what do you do after the event? So to preface that a little bit more, the number one thing you need to do before the after event is you need to get all the contact details. Do not leave the event assuming that they're going to have your information. Make sure you get their information from whoever you're working with. This could be a prospect, this could be a physician, a clinician, it could be somebody, just a consumer sale. It doesn't really matter what it is, but get their contact information and give them your contact information. Do not rely on you just giving them your business card and them to follow up with you. Take down their information, get their business card, and verify it. Set an appointment for the following week where you are going to sit down, lock down that appointment, and make sure that you have a great conversation with them. Because there's nothing worse than spending money on marketing, trade shows, all your travel, your flight, your food, and your hotels, racking up $5,000 to $7,000 in costs, and then not following up. In our program, in a lot of our business prospecting that we do, the number one thing that we can determine will lead to success is the follow-up. If you are good at sales, you will do really well with prospecting and having a system that helps you prospect. If you are not good at follow-up and you are already not good at closing, having more leads is not going to help you. It actually probably will hurt you. So the way you fix that is you first get frequent, then you get good, and then you practice the close again to increase that ratio. So that looks like talking to 10 times the number of people, working on improving your pitch, and talking to more of those people who would fit your model. And then at the end of that, going back and figuring out, is this new pitch helping us grow the business? And the way you do that is you follow up with every single lead from the trade show or the event that you have. You call every single one of them, you email them, you get on a Zoom, you talk about business opportunities, and you always put it in their shoes first. You say, listen, thank you so much for taking this phone call. What can I do for you? If you're asking them what they can do for you, you have already lost that battle, because at the end of the day, the only reason people buy and sell stuff is because they have a problem and they want a solution. If you're going in there and saying you have a solution and you're trying to figure out what their problem is, you've already lost. You need to go in there knowing what their problem is and say, listen, remember how we talked before? Well, here's the solution. Here's why you should do that. If you are taking an approach pretty much any other way where you're not positioning your USP or your value around the problem set that they've already brought up, you are going to lose all the time. So you got to go into those phone calls, into those meetings, understanding what each specific client's problem is so that you can solve that on the spot. And if you are not willing to do that, then you should not be in sales. You should go and do marketing or maybe some other component of business operations. You need to focus on what's going to help your customer. All sales is taking some type of problem that exists in the marketplace, figuring out and confirming that multiple people have that problem, then creating a solution around it. If you have a product you created without a problem in mind, so you just came up with an idea, you really have to consider, has somebody else not come up with this idea because it sucks? Or do you have a really good idea, but you don't know how to sell it? In either case, I think it's very worthwhile to go out there and test the marketplace, get frequent, get good, then test your concepts, and do it in a way that you can get face-to-face with people and actually close it. And face-to-face could be a Zoom session. It could be actually face-to-face in person at an event, or you could even push it and kind of stretch it out a little bit, go for phone calls. But at the end of the day, if your product needs to be touched and felt and used, you're definitely going to need to get in front of people. But if that's not the case and you have a service, for example, people have to know, like, and trust you. And the only way they're going to know, like, and trust you is by getting on the phone, talking with you, seeing you on Zoom, or having some kind of conversation that's really focused around how can you solve their problem. And if you focus in that process on educating them about why you have a solution to their problem or why they should address their problem, you will be a lot better off, and you will find that your ratio to closing is going to be, your ratio is going to be much higher in the close, but also the duration it takes to get to that close is going to be a lot shorter. And that's just what makes sense, right? If you're going to do deal after deal after deal, you might as well compress the sales cycle and make it easier on your prospect and yourself. So just as a recap here, know your audience before you go to an event. Make sure that you do some type of targeted marketing there. Know what your investment is and make sure you're going to go for an ROI, but don't spend your time trying to get the ROI. Spend your time on solving the patient or doctor or client or whatever it is, consumer's problem, and you will get the ROI. If you go in there just looking at numbers, you will lose every time as well. So go in there, know your audience, pitch it to them, and then ask them, what is it that you liked best about what you just heard? Or have you heard enough to make a decision? If you're asking those types of questions, you're going to have people who are going to give you the kind of responses that you want. If you're not asking those questions, you're going to sit there with a huge pipeline, lots of prospecting opportunity, hopefully, and then really no closes. So at the end of the day, you got to open that pipeline, sell to your customer what they need, be very solution oriented, and enjoy it every day. Thanks a lot for listening. Hope you have a great night.